Junkie breaks into my car and dies. His parents demand money from me since he died in my car. Here's what happened. Subscribe to AmITheA on YouTube and hit the bell for notifications. I live in the US, but I'm an immigrant from the Philippines. This happened 4 or 5 years ago when I went back home for a month-long vacation. I rented a house with no parking spot for a month, and my cousin let me borrow her rarely used car that I had to park on the street. I was only there for a month, so I was almost always out and about meeting friends and relatives to make the most of my stay. One day at noon, I walked out to the car to find the door open, and a strange guy sprawled over the driver's and front seat. Puke spread all over the dashboard and what looked like a severe nosebleed. I was angry at first, but when I realized the guy had no pulse and wasn't breathing, I administered first aid and called an ambulance and the cops. I also needed to call a mechanic because the car battery was dead. I later found out that the car alarm went off until the battery died. I had slept through the alarm. I'm a very heavy sleeper. So I had a trashed car to wash, a battery to replace, and a police office to visit. Fun. The guy was DOA, and initial findings suspected illicit substance use. The cops suspected the guy to be a junkie, trying to steal the car, but had OD'd in the middle of it. Apparently, the place I rented was surrounded by slums and known as a hive for illicit use and sales. A sad story to be sure. This being the Philippines, I was averse to pressing charges. It's a very slow justice system, and I don't even know who I would press charges on. And at that point, I kind of felt bad for the guy, and I just chalked it all up as a bad experience. 4 days later, at around 8 p.m., an older couple, claiming to be the parents of the guy who died, with several tenodes, basically community police, came for a visit. At first I thought they were there to apologize, or to make amends in behalf of their son, but lo and behold, they were asking me for money. I was irritated at first, but then I thought money must be really tight, so I tried to be understanding and polite, but it was still a firm no. I understand that a guy died, but it was through no fault of my own. After that, all chaos broke loose. The previously calm mother cried as loudly as possible and tried to scratch me. The father tried to grab my shirt and wanted to punch me. Thankfully, the tenodes were impartial and herded them away from me. All the while, they were insinuating that I had something to do with their son dying. I was a bit shaken and genuinely just wanted to get away from there, but I made the mistake of putting that off until the next day. At around midnight, I was awoken to the sound of glass breaking and mental being ponded. They made enough of a racket to wake me up. About 4 to 5 guys were destroying the car and spewing all the profanities they could muster. I called the cops and went to stay at my cousin's place. In the end, I had to stay 2 weeks more than planned. I helped the cops try to investigate my case and paid for the damage incurred on the car. To add insult to injury, I never got my deposit on the house rental back. The house wasn't even damaged or anything. The end of the investigation resulted in 3 people being caught for destruction of property and grave coercion. Aside from profanities, they were also threatening me to pay up. Thank goodness the rental had a sturdy fence. A neighbor also presented themselves as a witness. Last I heard, they also had prior offenses that got stacked on top of my case. The parents were not charged. Yeah, I really don't know how to feel about this one. I mean, the parents are maybe grieving and want someone to blame and they feel that should be you, so they want some compensation. Or maybe they knew what was going on and just wanted a little bit of money out of it. Or maybe they thought you were one of their junkie son's friends and had something to do with the OD and therefore would be more directly responsible. Either way, I feel this is a pretty scary experience to have to go through. I mean, you wouldn't feel safe at that place anymore, hence staying at your cousin's. But this is completely random how this happened, and isn't something you should have to feel scared of the repercussions of. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below. And don't forget to subscribe. Entitled coworkers get really picky about the free candy I'm bringing them. At work, we have the candy drawer for when you need a sugary mid-afternoon pick-me-up. Everyone takes it in turns to bring stuff in. There's no official schedule or roster. You just dump whatever you bring in the drawer and everyone rates it as they need a snack. While I was out shopping the other day, I found a bag of individually wrapped chocolates, so I grabbed it to add to the candy drawer. I was honestly pretty excited about them. They were a European brand I didn't recognize, but they were all really good flavors like raspberry, pistachio, hazelnut, and dark chocolate orange. They were a really high percentage of cocoa, and I tend to prefer European chocolates to American. Well, I tossed them in the candy drawer and thought nothing of it, until I went to make myself a tea around midday, and overheard a couple of coworkers talking. Who brought in the generic crap chocolate? Right? Name brand or nothing. Don't fob your cheap crap on us. When I checked at the end of the day, maybe 2 had been taken. The kicker? Before I tossed in the chocolates, the candy drawer contained nothing but a handful of Smarties and half-melted Tootsie Rolls. Enjoy your stale name brand gunk, jerks. My chocolates will be accompanying me to board game night, where they'll be more appreciated. Beggars can't be choosers, guys. I mean, this person's bringing in free candy for everyone. You don't need to complain about it. You can choose just not to eat it. Maybe it's not something you enjoy, but something someone else does. At least our original poster likes them. But at least our original poster has the right attitude. If they don't want them, more for you. I told my students to think outside the box with their resources for the next test. I wasn't expecting what this one student came up with. I used to teach intro to college courses, freshman sessions where we'd go over study skills and campus resources and how not to drive yourself nuts. Fun class to teach, especially for me. I love deconstructing classroom norms. I usually started every semester in street clothes with a backpack, hiding among the students and complaining about the late professor. Once, for an exam, I offered the students any resource they wanted. After all, I had made the test more about interpreting information rather than memorizing it. Bloom's taxonomy, don't you know? If they could look up a term, they'd be able to better reason their way around it. Most brought books and notes. A few brought laptops and note cards. Except for one student, however, who came to my office hours right before class. Mr. Original Poster, what can I do for you? If I don't have access to a resource, you'll help us find it, right? Like in that library literacy unit we did? At this point, I'm still not catching on. Of course, that's what I'm here for. You said we could have any resource we wanted for the test, right? At this point, I'm thinking nothing of it, expecting open book assurances or the like. Yep, that's what I put in the syllabus. What are you thinking? Great. I'd like the answer key to the test, please. I had to take a second and then just grinned, proud as can be. I'd pushed them all semester to think outside the box and carve their own way. And this audacious little punk came up with the perfect plan. He got his answer key. And because I had also allowed group work, the whole class got it. Luckily, most of the test was measured more on rubrics. For example, short answer responses as opposed to multiple choice. So they still had to come up with a way to phrase it in their own words. I mean, I guess if it's okay with the teacher, none of the students are going to complain. However, I don't think there are many teachers that would have accepted this. While a lot of resources are allowed, I don't think that this is one of the ones that they're thinking of. Thankfully for the student though, they got a teacher who's a little more free-form in the classroom, let's say. I doubt he's going to let you do this for every test though. I push myself to my limit, trying to work hard for my company so I'll get a raise. Too bad they think I'm an average worker. I, 26-year-old male, started my first job after college 3.5 years ago. I was hired with a group of 25 people. I used to run a lot of clubs in college, and had this I need to finish my job as best as I possibly can attitude when I first joined. I was good at what I did, and put in considerably more work than other people who joined with me. Another huge motivation behind this was that since the initial pay wasn't good enough, I wanted to impress with my work and get a really good raise at the end of the year. So throughout the year, I kept working late hours, stayed at the office for 10 plus hours on the regular, and in general just worked really hard. The way our work dynamic was, I was the only one under my management, and we were both supposed to share the work on the projects. And slowly and steadily, my manager started noticing I'm taking up extra stuff, and he started offloading his work onto me too. Now, I was essentially doing my own job and half of his job as well, and had reduced the time it took to do those things by at least 40%. I was stressed and overworked, but was getting exceptional weekly ratings, so I felt it was worth it. Oh, how naive I was. Appraisal time came and I went into the one-on-one with my manager. This guy tells me that while I have the best performance ratings in the company, they're not allowed to give freshers a huge raise, and I received the same raise that the others who joined the company with me did by doing the bare minimum. I was ticked. I told my manager that since the company has declared me average, that he should expect average performance from now on. He laughed there, thinking I was kidding. I wasn't. Next day onwards, every task that would be done in 2 hours now needs 8. Won't stay in the office for more than the agreed upon 8.5 hours. I won't finish up lunch quickly to get some more work done. I won't do any of your job for you. Oh, the client is asking for this document that I prepared in an hour? Sorry, your average person wouldn't do it in less than 4. So I'm gonna keep it with me while I take the next 3 hours to figure out how to update the table of contents. Oh, there's something you need to ask after work hours? Sorry, it'll have to wait till tomorrow. Complaints started coming in quick about the delays in deliverables. Managers started spending a lot of time frustrated because he wasn't very good to begin with, and now I wasn't taking up his workload. I spent the entire year working 2 hours a day, while I spent the rest of the time listening to music, browsing Reddit, and watching him struggle. I left at the end of the year for a job that paid 3 times the salary. Some details of our projects get published online, and last I checked, this guy was running 7 to 8 months behind on some of the projects, and from what I heard from some of my friends in the company, didn't get any raise last year. This is a perfect example to employers of you get what you pay for. If you have someone who's coming in and working this hard and you're gonna reward them the same as you do all the other slackers, guess what? They're gonna work like a slacker. Instead of setting the bar low like that, maybe you should be trying to pick up those low people and bring them up to the level of performance that our original poster's doing. Mind you, they're choosing to go above and beyond, and I wouldn't expect anyone to do that if they didn't want to. But given how much extra effort they're putting in, they deserve a little something extra. You had the opportunity to have a great worker for you if you just acknowledged the work that they did. Instead, you tried to save a buck, and look where you are now. I hope you learned your lesson. Teacher doesn't believe me when I tell her I'm sick and tells me to just throw up on the floor. This happened to me while I was in elementary school. Our Mrs. Math teacher really hated my guts for no reason really. She would always find an excuse to lower my grades or blame me for something I didn't do. I was a pretty sick kid and had bad asthma, dermatitis, and was sickish in general. Thinking back, I think her hating me had a lot to do with that, as she felt I had special treatment and privileges. One day, we were doing a test and I started feeling not well. It came to the point of really needing to puke, but I held it in because I knew she wouldn't believe me. Then I started shaking and kinda puked a bit in my mouth. So I stood up and started to go towards the toilet. We had a rule that anybody who has to use the toilet can do so without asking. She, of course, stopped me and told me to sit back down. I tried explaining, but she wouldn't have it. One girl stood up for me and said something like, "He's really pale and shaking and sweating. I think he needs to go home." That caused the teacher to go on a full 5-minute rant about how I'm a spoiled liar who didn't study for the test, and now I'm trying to fool everyone and that I'm taking away their precious test time, and they should hate me for that. I said, "I really need to puke," and she just scoffed, saying, "You ain't going anywhere with your lies, so you might as well do your imaginary puking here." Yeah, you can guess what happened next. At that point, I couldn't hold it in anymore, so I was happy to do so. First, I puked a bit through my arm, and then it all came. All across her desk, her grading book was ruined, and all over the floor. She tried to blame me, saying that I threw up by force, but the principal didn't buy it after the doctor examined me. Nothing special happened to her, but she never bothered me again. Some teachers really have a stick up their butt. I get it. They're responsible for you and your education, and they don't want your parents coming back being like, why hasn't he learned anything? And there's a lot of pressure on them from a lot of places and yada yada yada. But with all due respect, maybe they need to just stop caring so much. This kid's not feeling well. Whether he's lying or not, he's saying he's sick and he needs to puke. Is it really worth it for you to fight to keep him there, instead of just letting them go and do what they need to do? Cause now your gradebook's ruined and you got a whole lot to clean up. Actually, that probably falls to the janitor, not the teacher, so that's even worse. You've just made a nice gross problem for someone else on top of it. I hope you're happy with yourself. My sister-in-law keeps blaming me for the relationship my brother has with the rest of our family. I told her she's directing that at the wrong person. I, 31-year-old female, am the middle child of my family. I have an older brother, 35, and a younger sister, 29. My brother and sister are not close. Never have been. The only time they're in the same room is Christmas and maybe a family function. They don't keep up with each other's lives. When my brother got married, he didn't invite my sister. And had he invited her, she wouldn't have shown up. I get along with both siblings, but am a little closer to my sister. I love my brother very much though, and I never had any trouble with either of my siblings. I had fertility issues. I went through periods of not getting pregnant and then getting pregnant and miscarrying. While my sister-in-law was pregnant with my niece, I suffered my most traumatic miscarriage. My parents and siblings showed up. My sister stayed when others had to leave, including my husband who had to go back to work the next day. But I had to remain in the hospital for a few days. She had no baby shower for her pregnancy. Initially, I had planned to offer to host one for her, but then the miscarriage happened and I couldn't. Apparently, she was angry that my sister was so supportive of me and helped me out so much, but never offered to throw a baby shower for her. I went for more extensive tests 18 months ago, and we finally found out the reason for my fertility troubles. It was something they could help me with. They were surprised that I hadn't been diagnosed sooner, but I was lucky and I got pregnant and I had my son this past summer. Ever since I had my son, sister-in-law has been worse. She's bitter that my sister threw a baby shower for me, alongside my two best friends. She's bitter that my sister met my son at the hospital and has been around him a lot. She feels like my parents were more excited about my son than my niece. She's angry that my brother was excited for me and also spent time with me and my son. Most of the time, she just glares at me, and that's how I know she's mad. But a few times, she has commented that I must love all the attention, or it must be nice to know I can easily overshadow someone else's joy. Last week was when I had enough. It was my brother's birthday and my sister didn't show up. Sister-in-law was snapping at me constantly, saying how I hog my sister and how I rub her and my sister's relationship with my son in her face, and how everyone was so excited and there for me about my son, and even comforting and supportive when I miscarried. But no one seemed to give a crap about her daughter, and the fact my sister doesn't want to even try and have a relationship with our niece. She mentioned the baby shower too. Just so much stuff. I told her she was taking her anger about all of that out on the wrong person. I suggested she talk to my brother, since he's the one with the bad relationship with our sister. Sister-in-law called me a jerk, and my brother heard her at that point and came to calm her down and figure out what was wrong. She kept saying I was a jerk, and he apologized to me. But she's really mad at me. Am I the jerk? This sister sounds like she really has some confidence issues or something. Or maybe she doesn't know the full extent of the relationship between her husband and the rest of the family. The fact that your other sister isn't around or she didn't get the support she needs has nothing to do with you. I'm sorry that you're jealous and that you saw all of that directed in one way, but that shouldn't be held against that person. That person got the support because they needed it. They don't need you tearing them down now. It sounds like our original original poster went through quite a lot before they finally had a baby. It makes sense that everyone's going to be a little bit more excited about it. I understand that the sister-in-law would have wanted that same kind of support, but I'm sure there was support there. At the end of the day, you're still giving them a grandchild. You're still bringing a new family member into the world. I'm sure there was a lot of attention on you, but it's not our original poster's fault that you didn't get all of it, or the majority of it, or whatever the heck it is you want here. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories. Or if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode. If you like Am I the Jerk, give Am I the Genius a shot. Everything linked in the description.